Welcome or welcome back. For those who don't know me, my name is Money, and this is Conversations in the Chair, a space where I share different topics about things I'm going through, gone through, and grown through. A digital journal, so to speak, all in the hopes to encourage and inspire you. Joining me today in conversation is a friend of mine. Her name is Debbie, but I'll let her introduce herself. She is she's in the process of something new, and as we are approaching a new season, I thought it'd be perfect timing for us to have a conversation. Please join me in welcoming today's guest.
Hi, I'm Debbie, and I am going through a bit of a career change. I've just left my job after 15 years working for the same company, working my way up from a temporary part time contract all the way up to being a full time employee. And I am embarking on a career change. I'm going to be trying something different that's new to me and hopefully takes me in a completely different direction.
Today, we are talking about the Reinvention Blueprint, designing a new you. So, first heading, personal journey and mindset. What does reinvention mean to you? And have you ever gone through a major reinvention in your life?
Reinvention for me means taking a new path. My mum always says that I dance to the beat of my own drum, and I really like that. I feel really confident in choosing and going my own way. But I think for reinvention, for me, for the last 15 years, I've been known as a particular person who works for a particular company in a particular role. And I'm now trying to move out of that box and be something different and be credible in that space from the beginning, which I think is the hardest thing. When you say about going through reinvention before, not to this degree. I've never done like this is a bit of a 180 for me. I've definitely gone through points in my life where I felt the need to shed an old skin. So sometimes that's been through a work setting where I don't know. Sometimes when you've worked your way up from a junior role, people only see you as the person you were sort of 5, 10 years ago. It doesn't matter what achievements you've had since then. And so I've definitely done that where I've tried to embody a new sort of self there. And with that, I think comes there's confidence. I used to get a lot of feedback about sort of gravitas and things like that. So that's definitely one form of reinvention. And then about 8 years ago now, actually 8 years ago this week, I had a really serious horse riding accident, and I was off work for just under 4 months while I recovered. And that definitely led to a reinvention of myself, maybe a bit more around my values. So for the first time ever, I was really thinking about what did I stand for? What was I doing with myself? There's nothing like a near-death experience to make you think, wait, what impact am I having? Like, am I existing or am I living? And I wanted to make that change from existing to living. And I think what I'm going through right now is probably that the closest thing to that around I'm really trying hard to align my entire career with my values, as opposed to what I've done of late has probably been tie my values into the things I can do at the side of my career, off the side of my table.
Oh. What do you think holds most people back from making changes they desire?
Do you know I read a really good analogy, I think it was last week, in one of the books that I've been reading as part of my sort of career pivot. And it tells the story of a lovely woman who is swimming across a large body of water, and she's carrying all these rocks on her back. And it's quite a long swim, and she gets halfway across and she's really starting to flounder. And there's people on the shoreline and they're cheering her on. And they're like, drop the rocks. She's like, no, I can't. They're mine. She keeps trying to swim, and the rocks gradually pull her down and down. And you hear her going down. And she's like, they're mine. And I think it's the rocks that hold us back. So sometimes a rock is around how you think you should be perceived. So for me, making a career change means losing a job title and losing status. And is that okay? Sometimes it's around, like, the kind of company you think you should be working for, the kind of job you think you should be having. It's a lot of other people's perceptions. A lot of us get pressure from family to live and behave a particular way. So I think it's all these things that we think we should be doing that hold us back, rather than the things that focusing on what we could be doing. I don't think anyone really cares outside of you about your job title. I've certainly for years had a job title that means nothing to anyone outside the organisation, but that weight really held me back. So I think we are held back by what we think others think of us.
How do you know when it's time to reinvent yourself? Are there signs or turning points?
Oh, I think this is a really difficult question, because I think that the point for me to reinvent myself probably was a good couple of years ago. I should have taken that leap. So if I talk about it from career points, and I've been having lots of career conversations recently as I find my new way, and I think a lot of people do a bit of a career reinvention, maybe in their sort of late 40s, early 50s, where they've sort of achieved a lot in their work and they're maybe financially a bit more comfortable and can maybe take a little bit of a step away. And that's when they then start to focus on things that are less traditional, not a full-time job, that kind of thing. I'm doing that a little bit early. I'm not hit my 40s yet. I've still got a few months left in my 30s. But for me, I felt like I wasn't being challenged in the same way at work. It wasn't I didn't enjoy it. I loved my job, and I had such good opportunities in the last 15 years. Like that job made me, but I wasn't feeling pushed. And ambition is really important to me. So is achievement. I want to be growing all the time. And for me, knowing that that wasn't happening in the role, that I was feeling a bit bored. I felt like I was seeing the same things time and time again. It felt quite cyclical. So then deciding to move on from that. I think there probably were signs before that, just in how I felt about work. I didn't feel necessarily as excited in the morning.
You weren't jumping out of bed.
No, and part of that was as I became more senior, the stuff that I loved doing, which was being really hands-on and getting involved in things, you do less of that. You're managing people, or you're managing people who are managing people. So you're removed from that. So doing a lot more of the kind of nuts and bolts kind of stuff. And that wasn't giving me joy. And so I decided that now felt like an all right time with where I was to be able to sort of pivot into this new thing.
So, next section, we're going to be talking about breaking old habits and overcoming challenges. Many people fear change. How can someone overcome the fear of stepping into a new version of themselves?
So I think when you're frightened of change and it feels like a big change, I would always break it down and help you realize that actually it's not a sort of complete 100% change. So for me, I would be writing down. I'm a big person on like visualization. So for me, I'm thinking into the future. 5 years into the future, what are the things that I want to do? What do I want to be known for? How do I want to spend my time? And I would look at that in the whole. I would look at it both from a career perspective and a life perspective. And so once you build that vision, you're sort of manifesting it, I then take a step back and I think, well, if that's the what is the how?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's much easier, breaking that down into tiny little steps. And for me, I'm never looking to go from 0 to 100. I'm looking for what's the one little tiny change that I can make today that will then have a little impact tomorrow and then build from there. So I would always say it's much more incremental. So doing things that feel easier and more natural to begin with. So for me, from a career perspective, I knew I wanted to make a change. A couple of years ago, I got the chance to train as a coach as part of my learning and development at work.
Mhm.
So that was a huge tick for me. It's quite a big thing if I had left my job to train as a coach. So being able to do it alongside my job meant that that big change became a little change. It was just something I could kind of absorb into it. Um, Other things that I've done in the run up to leaving, so I knew that the kind of job that I'm wanting or jobs that I want aren't, aren't going to be advertised in the traditional way. So it's all about accessing the hidden job market. So then there's little changes I need to make in terms of how I network and how I present myself in order to be able to access that. So that has been all about having lots of conversations and getting someone I'm having a chat with to then introduce me to someone else that they know that I might be interested in talking to, and going down the process there. So although it has been a huge change for me, the way I've tried to approach it is I guess it's like a jigsaw. So that end picture, I know what I'm aiming for and I'm just going for it piece by piece. And if something doesn't fit the right time, just take it out, try it again later on, try it in another spot, and really taking this sort of the jeopardy out of it, I guess.
Mhm. What are some of the biggest myths around reinvention that people need to let go of?
So I actually had this advice from someone who is amazing. Her name is Sarah Ellis, and she is one half of Amazing If. They have a podcast called Squiggly Careers, and they give loads of great advice. But I often refer to Sarah as my fairy job mother because she has been so good at helping me navigate things over the last few years. And Sarah said to me, "Don't think that the first job that you get when you leave will be the dream job," and really taking the pressure off that. I think when you're doing something different and you're being quite open about it, you're saying, I'm taking a change, going in a new direction, there's a lot of pressure to get it
Right. Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
So her saying that made me realize that's not what right looks like for me. So what I'm doing at the moment is what I would call piloting.
Mm-hmm.
So I am working, there's 3 different companies who I really like, and they all do slightly different things, but all in the careers space. So my big goal is around helping people navigate their careers better. That's what I want to do, is what gives me joy, and it's what I think I'm okay at. So I've got 3 companies, and that is also what they do, but in really different ways and for really different audiences. And so I've been going out basically doing work experience and shadowing them as they do their role, and I work out, right, do I like that? Could I do that? And when, again, none of this is going to be a full time job. So it's about maybe taking on a contract to try something. It's about doing a couple of days here, a couple of days there, and seeing what I like and taking that pressure off.
Yeah.
I initially thought, and I did interview for a couple of like big jobs, and I thought, well, am I going to jump into something new and different? And it took me ages to work out exactly what it is I wanted to do. So if you think of it like a funnel, I had to go through that big wide funnel and think, right, could I do this? And narrow it down. And a lot of the conversations that I had with people, I reflected afterwards. I was like, is that person, are they giving me joy? Are they radiating or are they draining it? And it doesn't mean it was a bad conversation. I just needed to know if I felt excited by the opportunities in that conversation. And that has been my barometer throughout. Who are the conversations, the roles, the opportunities that when I leave, I feel buzzing about it and I think I could make an impact, versus what are the ones where I think, nah, that's too similar to what I've done, or
It's going to be too taxing.
exactly, because that's not what I'm in the market for.
Failure is often part of transformation. Can you share a time when you had a setback during your reinvention journey and how you navigated it?
So I think failing is kind of normal, is my first thing. And it's only really a failure if you don't learn from it. And so I'm quite happy to fail. I used to say this all the time to my team. I don't mind us getting things wrong because it shows that we're experimenting and we're doing things differently.
Mm.
And so my whole team was not set up to succeed. You know, we needed a certain degree of failure to show that. I think for me, what I haven't got right initially about this reinvention was keeping it so broad and so vague at the beginning that people didn't know how to help me. So
Okay.
I would go and meet with people and have conversations, and they'd be like, "Oh, so what kind of role are you interested in?" And I wouldn't have an answer to that. And I didn't want to shut off any routes. So by doing that, I made it so vague. It would have been so much easier if I had gone in and said, "I am looking at roles like this." And they would have been like, "Oh, okay, well, I know this person and that person."
Mm.
And so that was a real big learning for me. I did a bit of work after those initial meetings to really try and drill it down. This is where AI is super helpful, being able to put in everything that you think you can do, and helping it churn out either example job titles or ways to make it nice and pithy. And I worked really hard on my CV, and I put it in like up top on my CV, the kind of things that I was interested in, and I got less shy about sharing that.
Okay.
So normally I wouldn't. Oh, I would hate sending CV. I felt like a bit of a hustler, but I realised it really helped frame my achievements and frame a conversation if people at least had an idea of what I did. And it was also good for them to be able to introduce me to somebody else. They would just send on my CV with a couple of bullet points. So for me, it was, I hadn't really made it as easy as possible for people to help me.
To help you.
And now I do.
Isn't that part of the process, though? Kind of finding out who you are in this sort of new space, but that takes time.
Yeah. And I think there's like prototyping. I guess I was doing public prototyping, and so some of those early conversations probably could have led to stuff but didn't, because I didn't approach it in the right way. So I think I would, if I was doing it again and thinking back to some of those really specific conversations, I probably would have tailored my pitch a little bit more. It doesn't need to be super specific for those meetings, but I would have gone in with a better articulation of what I was doing. Or I would have just waited a little bit longer to have those conversations. I was really early out the bat in having them. I sort of set myself a 3-month, the timer for leaving, and I hadn't really given myself permission to not immediately go into work. And it was only a couple of months in that I really reframed that and was like, actually, I'm going to take some time and then I'll start working. And that's really helped take the pressure off all those conversations.
Here's an interesting thought. Why did you want to kind of shift lanes so quickly? What was behind that?
I felt the dream scenario would have been to announce at work, I am leaving and going into insert dream job here.
Title here.
Exactly. So I guess it was that perception, because for a lot of people, when it was announced that I was going, the number one question was, "Oh, what are you going to do?" And I didn't have an answer for that. And I knew I wanted to not work there. I wanted to try something different, but I didn't have a good narrative. And it was my boss actually at the time, and she sat me down and she was like, "Stop mucking this up. Just think of a couple of lines, even if they're not true, and say it, and that becomes your narrative. You don't have to give everything away." So for me, I thought, oh, if I can say that I'm going into this great job, it will look like a success. And actually, now that I'm out, no one cares where I'm going or where I've gone or what I'm doing. It's totally fine. The only person putting pressure on me was me.
Yeah. Practical steps and strategies. What are the first 3 steps someone should take when they decide they want to reinvent themselves? Or what were the first 3 steps that you took when you decided you wanted to reinvent yourself?
So I think that what works for me won't necessarily work for everybody else. You got to find your own sort of way through it. But for me, I first of all did that visualization piece. So looking at where would I want the future to be? And this is, ideal world situation. Not saying it's all going to happen, but I think to create the change and want the change, you have to be able to see that change. So really taking the time. I actually took a career break about 1.5 years ago. out of work. So I took 3 months away to really do that deep thinking and to not work for a while as well. I have had a job. I mean, I've had a job since the age of 13. There's not been a point where I've not been working. Sometimes it's been alongside school and uni, but I've never had that time out. And so I wanted to take it to see, how did it feel not working? How did I feel going back into that role? What are some of the conversations I could have when I was off? What could I do? So I'd sort of done my try before I buy about not working. That visualization piece, so I knew what my skills and strengths were, and I think it's really important to know what they are, in terms of there are things that I'm good at and enjoy doing, because I think there are lots of things that I'm good at that I don't want to do for my career, and there are lots of things that I enjoy doing but I'm maybe not particularly good at. So finding out what are those things and really honing in on them. So that was my sort of first piece, doing that sort of skills, strengths audit, that visualization kind of work. Then I had to look at my network and the support I could get from there. So I did work with a coach. I believe in the power of coaching. I think it's really good to have somebody who has no skin in your game, who you can have conversations with, who doesn't give you any judgment. Because it's been quite hard. When I've spoken to my family, I'm the only person who's ever been to uni, and I'm walking away from this successful career in finance and trying something different. So it was really good to have someone who had no judgment. So I spoke to her a lot about what I was going through. And then she helped me look at what was already existing in my network. So for me to get the kind of roles I wanted, I needed to have an awful lot of conversations. So trolling through things like LinkedIn, anytime I met someone in a professional capacity for the months before I left, I spoke a little bit about what I was doing and gauged if it was worth having a conversation with them or if there's someone that they knew that I should chat to. So really, really working my network. And I hate networking. I am an introvert, so it is not my natural,
yeah.
But I did it. I went to events. So Google did an event around women in AI, and I turned up to that on my own. I would never normally do that, but it was really good to be able to have some conversations about where I was going, make some connections. So really working those connections. And I go a bit deeper. So I looked at connections both in that West where I worked and externally. Oftentimes when I'm looking at those kind of networks, the connections, I will score them on a scale of 1 to 10. So how would I rate the connection at the moment? And if it's a 5, okay, that's fine. I would then take that list and prioritize it. So who are the people that I think it's most important to have a strong connection with? And I would look at things that I could do to turn my weak ties into strong ties, or to generate weak ties from people I didn't know in the first place. And I would be thinking about, a connection isn't just about adding someone on LinkedIn. For me, it's a bit of a value exchange. So doing that. So that's my sort of second stage, has been that networking. And then that third phase has been creating little experiments, I guess, is the best way to do it. So piloting these different approaches. So I think that I want a portfolio career. I've never had that before. I don't really know how it works. I don't know how it's going to feel. So I'm going to try it and see. And I'm really clear with an experiment, there's, a hypothesis. What am I trying to prove? What does a good outcome look like? Is it measurable? And so being able to do that and see. And so for myself, I'm like, okay, in 6 months' time, where am I at? What am I earning? How am I enjoying it? So it's not all about money for me. It's about having a good work-life balance as well. It's about doing kind of work that has impact. And so trying all of that. So I've been really clear at sort of splitting out into those phases and giving myself a time frame to try something, and then also being okay with stepping back and knowing that not everything I'm going to do will work. And that is totally okay, because I will learn from the things that don't work.
What role do habits, mindsets, and environment play in successful reinvention?
Okay. I think these are all critical to success. So when you have worked somewhere for as long as I have, 15 years, the kind of habits you build up feel normal. And it's only in doing some of my experiments and trying some other ways of working that I realize how not normal I am. So you get really used to a particular way of working, a way that might be a bit more hierarchical. And so some of the other places that I'm looking at, it'll be really self-led. So it's not going to be a hierarchy. I don't need someone's permission to do something. I'm having to use an awful lot more of my own initiative, which is what I wanted. I wanted a contrast of cultures, but it is really, really hard to break some of the habits that you are used to. So even not having a traditional 9 to 5, how do you make sure that you are
Productive.
that you're doing the right kind of things? You spoke about environment as well, and that for me has been really critical, is understanding the kind of environment I thrive in. So I tend to like a fast-paced environment where there's a lot of learning and where you work in a team. So on the sort of color insights, I'm a yellow. I come out really strong, like 96% yellow. So that is all about involve me. I like to be in the midst of things. I like a group work. I also come out really high on my red, so I quite like to be leading a team. I like to be making decisions. My blue comes out really low, so that's around like long-term insights, data, things like that. I will always go on my gut rather than what the numbers tell me.
Yeah.
All of this means that I am not good in a long-term situation. I get distracted really easily. I'm good for a short, sharp problem that you need solved in a creative way with a little bit of EQ thrown in. That's where I thrive. And so working for myself, I've lost the team environment that I'm used to. I've lost that ability to kind of lead a team as well that I'm used to. So it's been a real change. So finding companies who can kind of help me build microcosms of that has been really important. And then also like really basic things like, where do I work? So I cannot work from home full time. That is not going to work for me. I was always a go into the office 3 days a week kind of person. So trying to replicate that. So I am now an unestablished expert in like flexible working. So where can I rock up and work? So Barbican is a really good place. The King's Cross Samsung place is really good. So where can I go and work somewhere that's not at home when I need to do that sort of deep thinking? Because my yellow, it's like being something shiny goes by and I'm like, oh, I'm away with that. And then as part of some of the pilots that I've been doing, I've been going and working in other people's places of work. And that's been really interesting as well to see. So working with some comms teams where they're based, or working with other financial services clients where they are, and just seeing what their setup is like and understanding what I can kind of benefit from there. Habits, environment,
Mindsets.
So I think mindset wise, and actually the Squiggly Careers podcast has done loads on this, and they have some 10-minute tools that I find really useful in the course of my career, but it's that difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So a fixed mindset, are you a know-it-all, versus a growth mindset of a learn-it-all? And I'm definitely in that learn-it-all space. I always have been. I love learning. I am, the nice way to say it is curious. The accurate way to say it is probably nosy. I want to be involved in things. That's my yellow coming out. And so being able to sit in my natural mindset of growth has been really good. It doesn't mean I have not doubted myself. There have been various points in this where I'm like, I don't know if I can do what they're asking of me. I would really like to chat this through with somebody and there's no one else in the team. It's just me to be able to check in on this. Even things around how I structure myself as a freelancer, all that kind of things. It's definitely been a big growth journey, and I'm going into it all with positive intent. Also, just on the practical level, I saved really hard to be able to give myself this, like a parachute, I guess, or a financial cushion. So if things are really slow and I'm not making money for a few months, that's okay, because I knew that this was part of making that change. I'm not going to walk into something right away. I'm not at the salary level I was at. And so I think giving myself permission to be experimental and be in that phase is really, really beneficial to me.
Do you believe in the concept of fake it till you make it, or is there a better way to step into a new identity? Pregnant pause.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it, because I think in some respects, fake it till you make it is exactly what you have to do. So when I've been doing my mini experiments and I've been going in places, No one is saying, this is Debbie, she's never done this before. There's none of that. I have been in as a member of the team, and I have had people in the workshop coming up and asking me, oh, can you help me do this, that, and the next thing? And I'm like, sure. I'm seeing this content for the first time as well. I've not run through it, but yes, I can help you because I believe in my ability to do that. So yeah, there is a bit of like fake it till you make it, but I also believe in being open and honest about the journey that you are on. So for me, I would be giving a different answer depending on who the person is that I'm speaking to. So all the companies that I'm doing bits and pieces with, they know what I can do, what I can't do. I have been probably far too honest in all of that. I've been really clear that I'm not looking for a permanent job, that I'm not good at long term, that I'm not an admin or a strategy person in that same way. But I'm really clear at the things I am good at. And they are leaning into that. I'm surprised at some of the opportunities I've been getting because these are based on a conversation that I had with someone in my network who I hadn't seen for 5 years, who then introduced me to someone else who's then invited me into their company. Like, that is amazing to me. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome going on around, like, oh my God, don't mess this up. It's such a huge opportunity. But then also, I'm like, if I have to lean into that to make the most of it, and I'll try. And if it doesn't work out, then that's totally fine.
Long-term growth and reinvention as a lifestyle. Once someone has invented in themselves, how can they continue evolving instead of falling back into old habits?
So there's definitely some data that says that you have to do something a certain number of times before you spring back into it. I prefer to think about.
Isn't it like 21 days?
I've heard so many different things. What I really like is Farah Storr. So she used to be the editor of Elle, I think it was, and she has a book called The Discomfort Zone. And I really like that as a concept. So the idea that you push yourself out of your comfort zone, and that is your discomfort zone that you were in, and that is a high learning space. It's probably a high fail space as well. But the longer you're there, the more that becomes your comfort zone, and then you can push next into the discomfort zone. So for me, that's what it means when we're talking about, you've done that reinvention, and how do you keep growing? It should keep feeling uncomfortable. So one of the companies I want to do more work with, they are really high on experimenting, on trying something new, like failing fast. And so some of the stuff they're asking me to do, I would say probably 80% of it I've never done before. So it feels really like scary. But I know because it feels scary, it's the right space for me. One of the other ones is asking me to deliver a workshop, and I am terrified of doing it.
Why?
Because I don't know that I have the credibility in that space to do it.
How will you get the credibility if you don't do it?
Exactly, that's literally what they were saying to me. They were like, we believe in your ability to do it. And I think it's been reframing what they're talking about. So it's a language that's familiar to me. And it's all about telling stories, which I can do. So again, just them having the confidence in me to do that, I know that's the right thing for me to do because it makes me feel good anxious instead of bad anxious. So that's for me where you keep going, is keeping pushing yourself. I mean, that's not going to be for everybody. There has to be a point at which you stop and are like, yeah, okay. I also believe that you cannot be throwing everything at the same time. So, life is, you're juggling balls, and some of the balls that you're juggling are made of glass and you can't drop them. Other ones bounce, you can drop them and be able to pick them back up. So for me, this is a big thing that I really want to focus on this year. It's one of my biggest balls. That's going to sound weird, but it's the thing that I'm really focused on. So some of my others I might drop to then pick back up, but there are certain things I will never let go of. So for me, I have compromised on my mental and physical health in the past, and I won't do that. That is a glass ball for me. So other ones I might drop in order to be able to free up a bit of time for this, but it's everything in balance.
I like that. So Next section, processing the change and emotional impact. After spending 15 years at one organization, how did you feel when it came time to leave?
I cried so hard my last day. But my last few weeks felt really difficult. I actually was looking at my diary. I keep a gratitude journal, and I was looking at it last night for some of my entries for this year. It's only been 2 months since I left work, and sort of seeing how emotional I was when I was writing my entry for that last day. It's hard. Work felt like a family to me. NatWest is where I had become the person that I am today. I've had phenomenal times there. I've had awful times there as well, but work has been there no matter what. When I had my accident, it was my work colleagues who phoned the insurance for my mum and sorted it all out there. I had really good travel insurance through the bank, and my colleagues made all these calls. There's people I've still never met to this day who fought to get me medevaced home from France. Like that, the company hustled hard around me. I've had the support of the old CEO, Alison Rose, the current CFO, Katie Murray. These are women who have lifted me up from where I've been, who've given me phenomenal opportunities. I got to open the stock exchange one time. I got to meet the Princess of Wales another time. Like these are great things that happened to me in the course of my career there. So leaving felt like breaking up with, from a long, yeah, totally. And there was an awful lot of grief for me. So whilst I could be happy and know it was my decision and that I wanted to go and try something new, it didn't stop feeling really sad. But I never once doubted that it was the right thing for me. I felt a bit of pressure. The number of people who were like, "Oh, can't wait to see what you do next," and I'm like,
Ooh.
"Oh God, me too."
Me too.
But I never doubted that it was the wrong thing. Like it was absolutely the right time for me to go and do that. One of the companies I do some work with, they talk about, if not you, then who? If not now, then when?
Yeah.
Oh my God, like that's the mantra. So it definitely, it felt right. But that last day, I cried to the point where they couldn't do a leaving speech because I just was like, I can't cope with this. I'm too sad. And leaving in the lift, I just remember standing there with my boss, just weeping so much. But it were like happy tears. It's right. I've closed a chapter on it, but it doesn't mean that I don't have anything to do. My old colleagues today have been texting me about home baking. I used to be a big home baker for the team. I would always turn up on a team day, and they're having their first team day without me. And they've texted to let me know that one of them has baked. They sent me pictures and things like that. So I still feel part of it without being there.
Being part of it.
Yeah.
So now it's about stepping into this new era in your life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the last 15 years has been solid employment, knowing what I'm going to be doing every day, that guaranteed paycheck every month, structure, stability, and I have torn that up in favour of the land of portfolio career, which I think is still like quite an 80s term, but feels right for me. So it's a little bit of all of the things that I'm interested in, and everything is geared towards having impact and benefit. And that is absolutely what I want to do with my time now. It might not be right forever, but for me right now, I've got the space, the freedom, the flexibility to be able to take this on.
How did you process the emotions that came with such a major life shift? Was it fear, relief, or a mixture of both?
So I think fear and relief were definitely part of it, but there was also joy. I feel really excited about what's ahead of me. And then sadness, I think maybe more than, there's a little bit of fear of failing, but that sadness is something more about it. For me, I had quite a long run in at this, so I'd obviously been thinking about going for close to 2 years, and having such a long time to process your feelings in advance didn't stop me being really emotional.
Feeling the feelings.
I mean,
yeah.
and that last month, I definitely cried more than I probably had the whole rest of the time at work. But it was there. I had a really supportive boss. Like Sarah, my boss, was amazing at giving me time. We were really clear that a couple of months before Christmas, I was getting my handover in a really good place. I was still taking on additional responsibilities and covering for holidays and things like that. So I had plenty to keep me occupied. And then Christmas was the turning point. So when I came back afterwards, someone was phasing into my role. So it was all about me supporting her and being able to step back. And actually, that was really difficult. With some of my team, they have reported into me for 8 years.
Wow.
And so stepping away from that and then watching someone else come in and do my job and do it in their own unique and brilliant way, but different to how I was doing it, was quite
interesting
hard.
Transition.
Yeah, and for me, I'm used to being in the thick of things in the office, so not being part of that decision-making team and stepping back, I felt really weird for a while, a bit like, oh, what's my value, what's my purpose? And it was my boss Sarah who was like, you don't have to be doing everything now, take a bit of time. So I spent more time doing my networking meetings then. I worked on my CV during working hours. I tried really hard to make the most of it. So I wasn't in the office as much as I would normally, but I was still working on things that were bettering my career. So I saw it less of a, turning up to do my job and more turning up to work on my future job. Then how I process things. So I'm out a lot walking, and that's where I do my thinking. I know some people think in the shower. For me, it's getting out on a walk and really working through that. And I made sure that on the first day that I didn't have work, and I did this with my career break as well, that I had something really good and fun in the diary.
Okay.
So ceramics is my hobby, and it's a really good way to occupy your brain and your hands. So you can't be scrolling on a phone or doing anything else while you're on the wheel. So both times I booked a lesson to help me improve my ceramics on that first day. So I felt like I had like an achievement, something that I could really get into. So I have some terrible mugs that actually I've been working on. It's taken me a while to get them into the kiln, but that was my thing. I knew I wanted to make mugs better than I've been making them. So I'd set myself a little goal that was unrelated to work. So I felt like I had a sense of achievement no matter what was going on. And so I had that distraction as well.
Many people tie their identity to their job. Did you struggle with that? And how did you redefine yourself outside of your role?
100%. And I have really struggled with it recently because I had a family event. And how do you answer when everyone's like, oh, how's work? What are you doing? And I was actually reading on LinkedIn, there's a few people I follow. So Anna Mack is amazing. She does a lot of stuff on her portfolio career. And she was like, I'm going to a wedding soon, and I've been thinking about how I will answer the question of what I do for a living. Because when you don't do one thing, you do lots of things, and we don't work for a recognizable company brand. Again, it's really hard to articulate it. So yeah, I have really had to decouple myself from that NatWest person to what I'm doing now. And I still don't have my pithy sort of single sentence down, but I know that I'm able to talk more about the pivot. But it's really hard. For years, I defined myself by my success in my role. And to now not have that, to be even out of a performance management process. So, every year I would know how I was performing because it would be assessed. I'd be given a number. I'd be told this is how you're doing.
There'd be KPIs you had to deliver on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't have that now. So people who have a one-off conversation with me, I'm really hanging on to their words and being like, is this okay? Am I doing all right? I thrive quite a lot on sort of external validation. So having to find somewhere else to get that. But yeah, it's really difficult. I haven't even changed my LinkedIn yet because I don't know what to put on it. I will get there.
I love the honesty. So let's talk about now overcoming setbacks and finding new direction. Looking back on your journey, was there a moment when you realised this change was actually an opportunity for something greater?
Yeah, so there's a word NatWest over the last few years that they've used as part of a purpose, and that is around potential. And so for me, when I think about potential and my potential, was I fulfilling everything there? In some respects, yes. I think in what I was doing in sort of comms and corporate affairs, I had learned a lot, I was doing a lot, but I think I wasn't feeling fulfilled in the same way. And I think I had some, God, it sounds so wanky to say untapped potential. I don't mean it in that way, but I had the capacity to do more and do it differently. So I think finding that and understanding that that was a potential career option, because like lots of other people, I started doing the thing that I love as sort of off the side of my desk as part of my job. So coaching wasn't my job, but it's something I did. Facilitation wasn't my job, but you'd be damn sure that every team day I was there facilitating, running the sessions. Mentoring, again, not my job, but I had the most amazing mentees at NatWest that I went out to find. Even through the charities that I work with, that's not part of my role at NatWest, but finding ones that really spoke to me and allowed me to kind of stretch and build the skills that I wanted. So I really found ways to bring that in. And so then it made me realize that you're talking about around that this is an opportunity and I can maybe make something of it. And if I can't, I have loads of transferable skills. So I would be able to pick up something similar to the field that I was working in another company. I know I have that sort of backstop as an option, but I don't want to not try this new me on for size for a while.
You don't want to fall back to the familiar.
Yeah, that would feel like failure to me, going back to what I'd done. That's not the point of leaving, is to go and do a cookie cutter version of something in another company. Yeah, I want to try something different for now. I might go back to something in the future, but right now that doesn't fulfill me in the way that I think and hope this will.
Lessons learned. Did this experience push you to pursue something you wouldn't have otherwise considered?
Yeah, so I think if I had sat down 5 years ago, and we're in the midst of the pandemic 5 years ago, and mapped out my future career, it wouldn't be what I'm doing right now. I think that every experience I've had in the last, all my working life, it's probably been building to this. I've been adding bits and pieces to my sort of repertoire as we've gone along. But I wouldn't necessarily have thought that this was a potential career option. I think we're in a really different world right now. I'm doing a piece of work at the moment which looks at how many of the skills that we have now will be needed in 2030 and what the key skills are that we will need then. And it's all things that AI cannot replicate. So things like...
So you're future proofing.
Yeah, exactly. So analytical skills, EQ, influencing, all those kind of things. That's what I've been learning in the last sort of 25 years. And now I feel like I can use it in a different type of role, one that will hopefully be future proofed. I think it's about reframing. I've stepped off something where there's a promotion ladder. I don't think ladders work. This is a very squiggly careers. This is exactly what they talk about. Work life is no longer about climbing the ladder one rung at a time. I think it's less about promotions. It's more about possibilities. And that's what I'm looking at, is the different possible me's, rather than I used to chase promotions. I used to chase like what's next. I would always have my eye on my boss's job. So absolutely, this has all changed me. It's made me much more open. I'm looking at that possibilities, the sort of that progression change, the fact that I don't need to move up, I can move sideways, I can squiggle, I can try out different things. And yeah, stepping out of sort of typical corporate life, I guess.
Now you are on the other side. How has this experience shaped your perspective on career purpose and reinvention?
So, being on the other side of a big change like this, I think makes you reevaluate the KPIs and measures of success that I was holding myself to. So I have realized it's not about the job title, it's not about the company that I work for, it's about how I feel at the end of the day and what impact I've had. That drives me so much more than it ever did in the past. So I did a workshop recently and we got the reviews in straight away. And so you can read what people are saying about the session that you've had. And that's really humbling to see the immediate impact that you've had. So for me, that's become my new KPI. Yeah, exactly. Is around, can I finish the day and say that I had an impact, that I helped, I added value, I was valuable in some sort of way. And if I can say yes, then that's been a good day.
After 15 years in one organisation, how did you shift your mindset from employee to entrepreneur?
I think I am still a little bit on that journey. It's difficult when you're an employee. You are always, it's that team. You're all pulling in the same direction, all working together to make the same things happen. And when you're yourself, there's much more independence, much less accountability, and there's not that same sort of safety net, I guess. What I'm really lucky is that my partner is also more of an entrepreneur and runs his own business. So I've been able to kind of have that role model and see what that looks like, because there's no one else in my family who sort of does that. One thing that I have found really helpful is, in the time since I've left, I've had a few family things that have cropped up, and I have been able to actually fully focus on them and take the time out and like physically be there in a way that would never have been possible if I was in that sort of traditional corporate lifestyle. And so when I'm thinking about that definition between what is it to be an employee and not be an employee, I feel much more in control of my time and my destiny and understanding what I want to contribute to and what I don't. And so last week I was able to focus and not do anything for a whole week and just focus on my family and doing what I needed to do there. And that feels like a real luxury. No.
That's interesting that you say it feels like a luxury, because when you are an employee, essentially your time isn't your own.
Yeah.
So I can really understand that. So, last couple of questions. You said you're now focusing on building a portfolio business. Can you break down what a portfolio business is and what services you currently offer?
I can try. So a portfolio career for me is around not just having one source of income, but having multiple sources of income. So I'm working hopefully with a couple of different companies to kind of spread the risk, I guess. And I'll be doing a mixture of, for some of them, it'll be facilitation. For some of them, it might be coaching. Some of it might be career content creation. It will vary place to place. And as I get more into the groove of things, I'll understand where I can sort of add value. What I've been clear on is that career development is the space I want to focus on, but I don't want to lose out on my existing experience. So sometimes I'll be working with other comms and corporate affairs clients because that is what I specialized in for the last 15 years. Sometimes I'll be working with financial services clients because I've worked for a big bank, so I don't want to lose that. So trying to keep my specialisms within that career space is what is really important to me, and being able to do a mixture of working for so some of them are slightly bigger companies that I might work with, and some of them are slightly smaller. So it'll be a bit of a variety. And that's what I think I'll find really interesting, is being able to do something that's quite different every day.
What advice would you give to someone considering a portfolio career but unsure where to start? And finally, what's next for you? How do you see your business evolving over the next few years?
So, in terms of advice, I think that big thing is around having multiple streams of income. That's what makes a portfolio career work. And in order to do that, you have to have a mixture of established connections and new networks. So there's a bit of the always on hustle, because if one thing disappears, you need to have something else that can potentially come in and fit the gap.
Fill that
It
gap,
is
yeah.
a huge juggling act. So that's would be my main piece of advice, is around look at your networks, your connections, those potential income streams, and map it out. I love looking at things with what's now, what's next, who do I need to be speaking to, making sure that you've got those warm leads and focusing your time on that. So when you are doing a portfolio career, you are your own brand. So people have to be able to buy into you right away. So really thinking about that. Lauren Spearman, who's a really good, I think she would die if I said influencer, but she talked a lot about building a career over the past year. So she left her job, thought she might walk into something new, and really documented how difficult it was to find a permanent full-time job. She's now moved into much more of that portfolio career space and loves it, and talks. Her TikToks are amazing. She is so honest, and she takes apart companies who post terrible job adverts, as she should rightly do. But she talks about always keeping a Friday free. It doesn't have to be that days a week, but she dedicates time to thinking, right, what's next? What do I need to be focused on? Any networking I need to do? Anything I need to sort of look at, consume, etc. And I really like that as an idea of having a bit of time that you focus on every week or on a regular basis to that sort of what's next thing. And then for me, in terms of what does the next few years look like, I have split it out into 6 months. So that's my first sort of trial experiment phase, and seeing if I tick all of the boxes. So yes, impact is important, salary less important, but girl got bills to pay. So
Girls got bills to pay.
There's definitely a cutoff there where I need to be financially viable in my new career. And then for me, I would love to be able to do something that combines this, but with maybe something a little bit more creative around running retreats, or something that kind of combines both mine and my boyfriend's love of art and creating and making, alongside some of the sort of life coaching stuff that I can do. So when we're talking about that visualization piece into the future, that's what I've been kind of thinking about as another potential income stream. But for me, I'm really thinking ahead to the next 6 months and 1 year. Is this viable for me as a sort of lifestyle, as a career, and then really taking it from there?
Thank you so much to my guest today, Debbie, who has shared with us her journey so far and the transition and what the next era of her life looks like, and her own blueprint to reinventing herself and what the rest of her story hopefully looks like. You never know, maybe there's a part 2. She kind of pulled her face at me. This has been Conversation in the Chair. I'm your host, Money.